Hello, hello. Welcome to Words and Upwards. How are you, everybody?
Do we have anybody in
Maybe
the yet?
not just yet. We are a little bit late. We're sorry about that. And
That's my
yeah,
fault. I'll own up to that. We
nah,
should
no,
figure out how to put that. How on YouTube you can set the notification for an upcoming live, or is
yeah.
that a paid feature?
I'm not sure. I know that you can, but I need to look into it. Right now, I just literally go on, create the stream, and off we go.
Oh, sure. And as I
Yeah.
told you, I did not get the announcement out when I planned to about this upcoming episode, but I put it out a couple hours early. So a lot of folks may not have had sufficient notice to necessarily join us.
Mhm. Well, look, we're still going to do our thing. We're still going to talk about things that we need to talk about. And it's been a week almost, eh, since the last episode.
Probably. I
Yeah.
feel like it's been 84 years since
80, yeah.
there's been a lot of life, man.
Things nowadays they just change so fast. That's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah, developing really fast. So I think without sort of further ado, let's start with the let's get the football stuff out of the way a little bit
Okay.
because I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot lately. But Wrexham had lost to Reading away 2-0. Um, the amount of like I went and saw the comments under the videos and Insta and Facebook. Uh, Again, the same thing. People are not happy with the performance. Some people say it's the worst performance of the year. Some people don't understand why it happened. All of a sudden there are rumors around conflict between Parky and the players, like all sorts of stuff just coming through. Um, we have spoken about it many, many times before, and I would like to just remind everybody and go back and watch our previous episodes. Um, if you are, let's say, if you are happy to win and accept positive results despite the team having very obvious shortcomings,
Mhm.
you are happy to accept losses because that comes as a package. If you do not address issues, even though you get wins, if you ignore them, if you choose to turn a blind eye, then you literally put your signature down to accept the losses when they come. It's if you don't, it's just dishonest. It's simply not only it is illogical, it's just dishonest. And I don't think that the team had performed any worse or any better than before. To me, like from what I saw those 10 minutes, the performance was on the same level. Um, Possession, no possession, as if it never happened before. Same thing. No build up from the back, bad passes, nothing new there. Uh, Complete lack of creativity and structure around the entire pitch. Every game that happens. No distinct plan B or plan C or even plan A. Yes, yeah, again and again. The fact that the players seem disjointed and lost on the pitch, trying to play what they see and create a moment of brilliance. Yes, and yes again. Somebody else had joined us, by the way. Hello to whoever
Woo! Hi,
to whoever
person.
that person. So, so when people say it was just absolutely appalling and worst performance and blah blah blah, no, it wasn't. What I have seen is a very young, ambitious, well coached team of Reading
Mhm.
who decided that they are not going to be sitting back. They took the initiative and they deservingly won the game. Uh, it doesn't matter whether it was a penalty or not. To me, it was. But it's one of those that it's kind of 50-50 depending on the ref. But that was not the game decider in any way, shape, or form. The From what I saw from minute 11 to minute 20 is just like we discussed before that absolutely desperate football in defense, sitting on the ropes, guard up, uh, hoofing long balls forward without any plan to build a counter attack. Basic mistakes again. Players on the pitch are disproportionately positioned. The basic mistakes of just again passing to a wrong person, wrong time, wrong place, and
Mm.
it's not like it happened. It happened every now and then. It was a continuous affair. So there was pretty much every other game that I saw was the same thing that was happening. But this time around, because we played against quite quite young and fast
So
guys, they
young.
managed to, yeah,
So
yeah, and
young. Yeah,
how
baby
great,
faces. Baby
yeah,
faces.
how great for them to actually to exploit that and to be able to do something with that. I was very very happy for them. Let's put it this way. I was absolutely surprised that they're going to be able to do it to that level. Um,
I
so
probably need to interject real quick, Ivan, because
yeah.
I just realized we didn't say who we were. You used my name, but maybe we need to start saying, I'm Ivan and I'm Ruby at the beginning of the show, especially for folks who don't know us, because that
Yeah.
kind of ties into when you mention how often, you've repeated this opinion or analysis about play for folks
Hmm.
who are joining us perhaps for the first time, not just today, but who don't know of you prior to this podcast, may not be aware that these are concerns you were raising last year when I first encountered you. So, when perhaps there is a tone of fatigue about really, you know, Groundhog Day for you, of
Hmm.
what the issues continue to be perpetuated through each game, and part of why we have our 10-minute tasting. It's not just some sudden opinion. It's not just new to the show for folks who don't know it. These are concerns that Ivan has had preceding this season, and I'm sure before I met him. So when he might sound a bit defeated in having to restate something or reframe it and use different words, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that not everyone is necessarily aware of this quest you've been on to educate and inform, and for them perhaps to have a little context on that. Because, I think anyone with a message that they feel is valid and has merit to prevent disappointment or any other kind of negative consequence sure can get disheartened when they feel that it is either fallen on deaf ears or perhaps been misconstrued. So I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that when you say we've said it so many times, well, we do have a few other episodes, but it goes so much further back than that.
Yeah, yeah. Now I've been saying that, to be honest, the first time I had noticed that was in the National League, and the thing is that back then, other teams and other coaches in the National League and League Two, they also realized that that's what is done by Wrexham, and that's what Parky wants the team to do. But even though they understood, they could not do anything about it because they didn't have the firepower, they didn't have the personnel to deal with that. Wrexham always relied on substantially better players. So they just individually, each element was better than the opposition. So it was very hard to do something about it. That's why we can everybody happily ignored that without actual realization that this is not sustainable and this fairy tale will come to an end. The What is happening now is that we got to the point when no matter the fact that the players that we got are still superior to most teams in League One, they are not miles ahead. So now they correct, well organized teamwork and structured gameplay can prevent individual moments of brilliance from happening, and that's what we see time and time again.
Sorry,
What, no.
my lights. One of my lights with the storm rolling in and everything, and it just started to fall like a tree. So
I will
yeah, we're
find I
super
will find that
professional.
face. I will find that face of yours, and I will
It's
I will
you
use it
know it's
for a
gonna
shortcut.
the stupid algorithm on YouTube. You know it's going to do that, especially if I don't put, because it was going really near my water. And so, yeah, in those nanoseconds, my ADHD mind. Sorry, folks, on audio for that interruption. I had a light that looked like it was going to take out everything. Sorry, Ivan. Back to what you were saying.
Crisis averted. No, I just wanted to say that the fact that we are seeing the same the same scenario play out game in and game out,
Mhm.
um, uh, it's if this is not a telltale, I don't know what is. And the question that we forgot to talk about the previous
Ah,
episode
yes.
came from Mardi Gras. I'm pretty sure that who it was, and they asked why we are not building from the back. Is that something that players cannot do, or is that something that coaching staff wants them to do? And and like, why is that happening?
Sure.
This in the case of Wrexham, it happens for one reason, is because Parky doesn't want them to do that for one reason or another. He prefers to play more of a direct style of football, so he relies more on a sort of direct long ball build up. He doesn't want to take. He thinks that building from the back has more risks than and it's like the risk to reward ratio in his head
Okay.
is off, and it's not worth uh, losing the ball in your third. What he thinks is that the team that he has is a lot better at winning second balls up the pitch
Okay.
and progressing from there. So it's I think what happens is that at some point in managers and football coaches' life, people get burned. So people
Mm,
try to implement that style. They try to work on that. They they see their team suffering, and they see a few examples when it would cost them a game and possibly even a job, and
mhm,
they give up on that because they
mm,
understand that this psychological pressure um, to sort of the psychological pressure gets to them because you do put yourself to um, into a situation when playing from the back you might lose confidence, and you might make things a bit more difficult for yourself every now and then. And the coaches, quite often, the ones who give up, I'd say, too early on that, they resort to a safer, longer type of play. Um, the the And that's why, remember how I was saying we're a team of destroyers. So
yes.
the team of um, people who are capable of playing that rather primitive physical football, and only that. Um, they so what Park is trying to do, and you can see that from his comments, starting from National League and League Two, when he talks to the players, he says things along the lines of you have to be stronger, strong on the ball, have more presence, win the second ball. So those simple clues when he literally wants their players to be more powerful. That tells me, well, that's what he said. I remember that
Yeah.
very
I mean,
distinct
just that
phrase.
when you phrase it that way, when you put it, into the appropriate, it sounds so ludicrous as, a demand.
It's well, I remember he was talking to Mendy. There was a episode, or was it like a triple A
It was
post
probably
game
triple.
videos that, and I remember I heard him talking to Mendy as they were walking down the tunnel. He was like, "Yes, that's what I was talking about. Be more powerful, like nice and strong." He tries to explore and exploit opponent's weakness every time. So he selects the players and build the team um, around the fact that they are supposed to win aerial duels and little battles for the second balls. So he wants his team to bypass midfield with long passes and win physical battles further up the pitch to simplify the entire process. Because I said it again, and I know it sounds kind of cynical and almost cruel, but the hardest element of coaching is to teach your players how to be consistently creative in all areas of the pitch. That includes building from the back. That includes knowing the intricacies and creating your own systems and patterns of play, moving players around in a very methodical structure, in a very methodical way, all the way from your goal. It takes a long time, a relatively long time. It takes a lot of work. It takes understanding of a lot of it takes understanding of players' individual abilities, individual habits, strong sides, and that means, like I was saying before, that means that you cannot necessarily take two new players or three new players and insert them halfway through the season, like we did this year, for example. When you building a team like that, you can't do that. You can only um, you what you can do though, you can use the current depth that you have because you don't rely on one set of 11 players playing game in and game out. You rely on those 20, 24 players working together over a couple of seasons. And but then what it gives you that true depth of when you can take take players in and put them sorry take players out and put them back in, and it doesn't change your setup as such. Um, but he has been in charge for 3 years now, and he had plenty of opportunity to do that, and it never happened. Even though initially, like in the National League, for example, there was no particular need to do that because you could play that primitive, simplistic
Yes,
sort of schoolyard style of football and still win, which is great.
which they
In
did.
fact, which they did, and it was not like that's why there was no issue with that. And even I probably would have done the same thing because some of those players who were playing, they were a little bit older. They were experienced. They were just miles ahead of everybody else they played against. But at the same time, what should have been done is that work in the background of actually working and creating the future-proof system for the next league.
Yes.
And
Okay.
in League Two, you could have done the same, but to a different extent. You could have still played. And look, and what it would give you, it would have given you that plan A, plan B, and plan C, because you always can revert to the basic style. Then, if need be, if the situation dictates, you can involve those systems that you work on the practice pitch. So by the time they got to League One, really another coach with a different philosophy right now would have had those patterns and those systems already built up.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
I do. I do.
there will be already a few options, a few aces in their sleeves. Instead, we have this by this day, and yeah, just like I
As
said,
the
if you guys,
only
that's the
plan,
only,
the only
and if
trick.
you guys, yeah, exactly, and if you guys were genuinely happy and you didn't mind playing and winning this way, then
Hmm.
you got to carry on being happy no matter what happens on the pitch now, because there is no other way. And this next, and there is next, this is next game against Wickham. Um, yes, it's probably a season decider to a certain extent, at least from a psychological standpoint. And the result of this game depends only on one team, and that team is
Before we
Wickham.
get too deep into Wickham, I do have a few points on what you've shared that I'd like to kind of touch on, if that's okay. Otherwise,
Sure.
please, of course,
Yeah.
finish it up. So, when you were talking about Parky and
Hmm.
people's expectations, of him or their relationship with him, it really made me think back to my own previous perspective, which in the I still have some fragments of holding on to now. But with every game that passes, in my heart and of course in my head, the likelihood of that outcome diminishes for me. As I become more educated in the sport and with the team, I have more difficulty advocating for the hope that Parky could change his approach. Now, I think you've done a great job addressing reasons why he hasn't. And I have a couple thoughts on that too. But I used to be pretty vocal about, yes, we know his history, but Parky, like the club, has not been the age he is and the spot he's in. We are all moving forward in time. And yes, I think the saying is history is the best predictor of future behavior. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
merit to that I've seen in my life. I liked to give him the benefit of the doubt that he might also be growing in his managerial career along with the club. So the opportunity for him to perhaps implement methods he hadn't before with this crop of players, with this financial backing, all those things could possibly manifest. And until the future has become the present or the past, we can't say it's not possible. And a lot of folks, even last season, were sharing your concerns of he's not changeable. The term dinosaur is used a lot this season. Now, we're into the spring of this season. When you mentioned other managers, not just Parky, when we've seen the situations where he throws the kitchen sink or when he tries a new combination, or let's say trying to build it from the back, even though, parentheses, we haven't trained enough to incorporate that. I think it's really interesting if folks don't necessarily have an appreciation for, yes, there are different styles of coaching on the pitch. There are different personality types for the locker room. But when you talk
Mhm.
about the pressures and I think it's more of a worldview. Yes, it's within football, but would you say that Parky's worldview when it comes to coaching is a more conservative view towards football and winning than, I don't know, any other coach you would know about? And I don't follow other teams, so because when you spoke about the risk versus reward ratio, because there's politics that comes into this. He might, let's say, most people don't give him the benefit, he might have wanted to experiment with more elevated forms of football, but upon it delivering a loss or two or some other thing, psychologically, the confidence of the players not feeling it click or not having as many reps to be comfortable. And honestly, the comparison that came to my mind of someone, not the same sport, this is the Wales rugby team with, is it Gatlin? Anyways, they just lost the Wales Rugby Union national team, just had the man who was their most winningest coach now become the most losingest
Mhm.
coach. Real word, people. And
Mhm.
what was interesting was part of what happened, from my understanding, was this incorporation of bringing uh, future proof kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
systems into the team that had some older players, bringing some younger players on. It does take time. And with a national team, unlike having a regular football club where you're constantly in contact, they come from other places, have less time to train and incorporate. But to me, that's what I thought of a dramatic example of someone taking that risk, believing in their vision, attempting to build it, and in the amount of time that they were given, the failure to bring wins or results that were satisfactory to the corporation, to or organizations, the team, the fans, he's not here anymore for however mutual it was or not. I think that's a terrific example if anyone wants to kind of go look at. Again, it's called Six Nations Full Contact, is a Netflix documentary about the Six Nations. It's on season 2. I think that'd be really helpful, even though it's not soccer football,
Mhm.
for an example of what you can risk, or folks who follow other teams in other sports have seen this before, who are sports fans. Do you feel that Parky's um, approach to football is conservative?
Very much so.
Okay.
90s called, they want their football back.
Jesus.
Um, it's
Oh my God. Okay.
I
And
grew up
and
playing. Yeah, that's all it is. It's a very old
okay,
school approach. Very.
I just wanted to make sure that because you and I, of course, have had more conversations than just on this show. And so I'm
Mhm.
able to maybe pull in some nuance where I've had more time to think about some of the things you share and have my own questions or perhaps connectivity that I see, but I want to double check it with you that I'm not making an incorrect assumption. Um, on the, sorry, I was just looking at the notes.
The
We talked
Welsh
about,
one is here. Sorry,
oh, yeah.
he's a guy from Wales. He lives in New Zealand, and we're really good buddies. We've been talking about
Oh,
football in Wrexham
fantastic.
over the last couple of years. So very good to see you here, my friend.
Thank you
And it's
for joining
super
us.
early. Yeah. So thank you. So yeah, carry on, carry on.
So you were talking about building from the back, and closer to the beginning of the show, you were mentioning, creativity on the pitch from Wrexham, and
Hmm.
we now know why we don't build from the back in answering Mardi Gras' question. But
Hmm.
creativity, I know, is something that you have said before that you didn't see in this match. You don't generally see, but you have said before it's something you don't expect because these players aren't trained in a way to either necessarily have that freedom or to have the support structure in place that would accommodate thinking on the fly. So I think that folks, again, maybe if they went back to some of the other episodes, I don't feel that when you speak of it and the absence of it, that they should interpret it as some of the other places that speak about lack of creativity who have the expectation that it should be being delivered. Because I
The
feel that you have said that's not something we should expect from this side under this leadership, at this point in time.
so again, we have spoken about it so many times, but let's make it clear that the players who are on this team right now, they are trained to do whatever. They have
Mhm.
the skill set, they have the understanding, they have the gameplay within them to do whatever needs to be done, depending
A
on what the
general
coach wants.
baseline of
General
skills.
baseline is there, yeah, and they are some of the best players in this team in every position. Literally, we have a very strong team. The players are amazing. The reason why the we play the way we play is that because in the eyes of Parkinson and the coaching staff, they are playing what they call safe football. They
Mhm.
historically lower league teams is a weird combination of young players either on
Mhm.
loans from higher
Oh.
leagues
Mhm.
or just the ones who grow up through the leagues and older veterans who kind of
Yes.
come back and finish their careers. So
Mhm.
I think what is happening right now is that the quality of the league is actually growing faster than the understanding of certain coaches of what to do with it.
Mm.
So a good example of that is the game against Reading when 17-year-olds actually all of a sudden perform better than certain veterans on the teams, especially to the business end of the season, because those guys are they a bit more motivated. They have incentive to show what they can do, because League
Mhm.
One is a if you don't make it out of the League One, you kind of get stuck if you don't make it quick
Okay.
enough. So those
That's
guys
true.
have that motivation to actually show what they got. And under a good manager who is creative, who's got tactical and strategical plans, A, B, C, and
Mhm.
D, if you are playing a possession based football, if you actually have a team that is balanced between destroyers and creators,
Mhm.
that is a lot easier to do. In the case with Parky, they he relies on physical prowess, on the presence of his. Our team is mostly a veteran team. We have all the players, experienced
Fair.
players. They're quite physically strong, and he wants that ball to be safely delivered from point A to point B, and he relies on a quick second ball win, on the aerial duel win, or on the quick turnover further up the pitch in order to minimize the risk close to your own goal. But the problem is
Okay.
that that kind of strategy, A, is very predictable, and B, the more you rely on players to perform individually without a certain pattern or patterns set in place, the more things become personal. And that's
Mhm.
why I said a few months ago that we will see internal conflict within the team because when you replace, not like, there's a huge difference between using a depth and replacing players. When
Mm,
you replace players and you literally tell them, because what the player sees is that I am being subbed, I'm being dropped for no good
okay.
reason, because there
Sure.
is nothing around me that helps me to perform. I
Mhm.
depend on a good or a bad day of another person instead of relying on the system and the learned pattern of the training pitch. So players don't understand, why are they all of a sudden to blame for unsuccessful result, for a bad result, and that leads to personal conflicts within the team inevitably. When you rely on moments of personal brilliance, you also
Yes, personally.
you also inevitably become a victim of personal grief and
Hmm.
personal emotions, because it comes hand in hand. And that's what we're seeing right now, when um, people are getting upset because it became personal. It was always personal. Yeah.
Fair point. I did have a couple other things. And for me, I love how some of this is really rolling into other things that we've talked about. And I appreciate people's patience with me, since I am still a football learner, to do some callbacks and, confirm with Ivan that what my brain is computing is this same message, or in line with what he's putting out as data. So just a little bit back to talking about um, incorporating new players, in the middle of the season, or in this case, rotating players, using depth. When you spoke about um, if you were doing what I'm thinking of as rehearsal, so if you had your plan B, plan C, plan D being built in the background from National League, League Two,
Mhm,
or even now, when you spoke about that, I thought of it a bit like an acting troupe. So you might still have other performances, plays that you have to perform for a number of weeks. But at the same time, you're not going to wait that number of, I think a great example that I've been exposed to lately are pantomimes, which are not
mhm,
a thing here in the US, but I was exposed to the most amazing one in Wales around Christmas time. But following the theater in Wrexham, uh, they have another show. Like, you don't get this lag time in between. So what you have are folks rehearsing for another play with different lines and different roles while they're still performing the one that's on the schedule. So when you talk about having something going on in the background, I think of it a lot as rehearsal while one
mhm,
performance is going on. And then you could debut it like you would the,
mhm,
the next show. And then that show, you got to work out the kinks. You have your matinees and whatnot that you don't get the grace for necessarily in sport. You don't get that amount of time unless you have an understanding admin and fan base, let's say. But it doesn't have to be something that we see on the pitch for it to be prepped in training and then attempted if it's in cup games or in league matches. But when you talk about rotating or swapping and our depth that historically it seems that we don't use, and it's rife with talented veterans mostly. I think I was thinking more about if you're going to drop three people in at half season, it's kind of like if we had that plan B in the works, that rehearsal in the works. It could also be cake batter. So bringing
mhm,
back our episode one spatula, you're stirring the cake batter that you started in August. It's now January, the window, and you have three ingredients that you were thinking you might could maybe incorporate or didn't plan for it to put into this cake batter. That new stick of butter, that cup of chocolate chips, that cup of milk are not going to instantly blend with that cake batter. It's going to take time. And then I also think from now tying that back in, I know this is really, really kind of
mhm,
extrapolating, folks, but tying it back into what you were saying about personal investment, personal identity, and a sense of self worth being tied into what is being asked of the players under Parkey and how they're performing on the pitch. That the emphasis sounds cultural to me, that maybe not enough work has been done to put the club, the team, or the vision as the top priority, where everyone understands that this is how we're going to do it. You are going to get swapped out, and it doesn't mean that you aren't worthy to the team, but we have to make sure everyone's ready to go at any point in time instead of running people into the ground and, messing with their careers with physical injuries and whatnot. So I don't know, Ivan,
Look,
if there was a question to that,
you
but
mentioned.
last thing, if he doesn't want to, if he doesn't like the risk, if Marky doesn't like the risk of us having a ball near our own goal, I can tell you, we've been spending a lot of time with the ball near our own goal, and it's real easy to tell when you watch it on a stream like myself, because that's our goal is the one I see for maybe not 75% of the match, but a lot of time I'm looking at Arthur.
Yeah, we're not spending a lot of the time with the ball in our possession, and to rely on a consistent performance or consistently getting positive result when you give the majority of the possession away is very, very silly. There is only a few teams in the world ever that could actually do that consistently. Definitely not this one.
Mm,
What you were saying there, there's so many things that we could unfold there. Yes, rehearsal being an acting troupe is a good comparison, but I think it only would be good for the beginning stages of practicing a certain system, like on
mm-hmm,
the pitch when you don't have the opponent. And quite often, as a coach, you actually, in the classroom, you do all the theory studies, then you go on the pitch,
mm-hmm,
you walk around first, you don't even use the ball first. For
mm-hmm.
example, you just learn your zones, your areas of responsibility, the way you shift, depending on where the ball is, depending on what the opponent is doing, depending on the stages of the development of the game, of your play, whether you're
So that's really
defending, attacking.
creating the stage and the backdrop and the scenery. You're not even to the point where,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
learning
the
about what the
the
role will be.
the difference between acting and football is that in acting you don't have an opponent. You don't have somebody who's actively trying to force you to make a mistake.
Gotcha.
Well, so first you're acting it out, then you add the
Gotcha.
ball, then you start playing situational games, and you divide those plays into various variations of rondos, set pieces,
Mhm.
exercises. Then you start playing into squad games. There is a whole process behind it. What but the when you building a system, it's in or systems. I don't think you can necessarily compare it to mixing a dough or a batter. I would
Okay.
compare it to designing and building your own engine. So
Oh,
like
Jesus.
there is
Oh,
there's so many
that's really
different engines
complicated, Ivan.
in the
Are
world.
you
Yes, yeah.
telling me football is hard and managing football is
So
complicated?
what Parky does, he stirs, he mixes like I said, he mixes a pot of batter. It's an
Mm,
old school approach when, just like I was saying before,
gotcha.
you
Okay.
rely on natural organic chemistry and chemical
Okay.
connections um, within the team. So you let them practice together, you let them play together, and you hardly ever introduce new faces, new people into that setup.
Okay.
You just let those people continuously interact and only play amongst one another, and you just wait on those connections to naturally develop. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's what you were talking about.
As opposed
Modern
to like
football.
precision engineering with an
Modern
engine.
football is, yes, you have your engine and you have
Wow.
certain parts, and you can take out and replace those elements, and the engine is still going to work because the elements are still there. So if the element
Okay.
is broken, say broken or injured, or there is a some kind of a fault with a timing belt, for example, or a piston, you just take a piston out and you put it back. You put another one in.
Well, and
Okay,
you know
so
that that's what you're looking for. You know that you're looking for that part specifically to
mm,
reintroduce into the system, as opposed to, seeing what's on the shelf, grabbing something and hoping it'll work. Like you're not sticking a cotton ball in that spot and asking it to deliver the work of a piston. Okay.
exactly.
Okay, that's
Well,
that's a great
um,
comparison.
the Welsh one is actually he commented, and I think that brings a good talking point. He says
Okay.
that we should have Smith start with Marriott or Mullen, and then Jay come on with Fletch second half. That
Okay.
way, they only play with someone who already understands our team and tactics.
Okay.
The only thing I would argue with this is that there is no tactics. We don't have tactics as such. We no, it's true. We in
I
that
know.
sense. We
I know. I
I
know.
was
It's
just saying. I was just saying we play what we see,
I'm not
and
I'm not laughing because you're wrong. I'm not.
the good the good point
Oh,
behind this is what what Welshman is saying, that we, instead of having tactics as such, we're having that chemical balance of players playing together, right? So remember when Marriott was dropped for Mullen back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That should never happen, because I think that part when that happened was the turning point of the season, because to me it was such
And
a
you didn't talk
vivid.
about that here. So at some point
I
we can
I did
revisit that.
I did not, but that was a
Yes.
there was
It was
such
a
a
turning point.
livid, vivid, absolutely exact picture of what is happening within the team. So what Welshman is saying is that yes, if you have a new player and you don't want to ruin the organic balance of the team that you already have,
Okay.
like he says, you keep the player of your original squad and you introduce a new player, say for the second half. Not for
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes like Parker does,
Yeah.
or for 1 minute, but for the entire half. And this way you can control that new blood, and you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of safeguard yourself from breaking that organic balance that people already have, and understanding on of how each other's play. So yeah, that's absolutely spot on. Instead, what we see is these two, okay, out, these two in, and just like I was
Well, at
saying,
least
the
now we
other,
have two to put in at the same time as opposed to just one. So we are
it
seeing
doesn't matter.
sets being
You can put
changed.
three
No,
at the
I don't
same
mean it
time.
as a, I don't necessarily mean it as a positive. I guess I'm seeing more group or couples subs happening now, and maybe that's because we're throwing the kitchen sink. I don't know what the reasoning is for Parky, as opposed to the more staggered, one on one that I felt like I saw last season. So no, me saying at least we're doing two. I guess I was arguing not for it being favored, but to me as a person learning, oh well, we're attempting to have more turnover. I mean, just oh God, like
The thing is that
sorry, my
um,
internal monologue is
no,
is, is leaking out of my mouth.
what what you're saying is that we have two um, we have two players who can go and play together and build the relationship, playing together, build their understanding, playing up front. The
I love that
problem
you think
is
that's what I was saying. Yes, make
no,
it
well,
make it sound better, Ivan.
the the situation is as such that instead of having Smith and Jay up front, we
Mhm.
could have the best players in the world right now playing up there. The result would not change, because the
Yes,
way the team plays, we do not deliver both of them consistently in a predictable manner. They
yes.
don't know what to expect. Essentially, they are forced to not only to survive on scraps, but all the time, they're forced to create something out of nothing. So
Yes.
when you're playing a striker and you don't know exactly when and where the next
Yes.
ball is going to come from, that
Mhm.
always makes you a second too slow, because you cannot predict the pattern of play. If your long ball and the defender or goalkeeper launching the ball forward hoping that you will win a header is the only plan, that is well, essentially, that leaves you completely vulnerable to any kind of creative buildup in on
Mhm.
any part of the top third of the pitch. This will stop happening. You will maybe score one goal every 6, 7 games maximum, and that's what we see with Smith, for example.
Are we doing
Um,
OODA loop today?
um, no,
It's okay for now.
that's like
Okay. I'll just let folks.
it's been 45 minutes. OODA loop will be another hour.
Okay, sure.
Um,
I'll just let
um,
folks know in case they want to look it up since we haven't gotten to it yet that when we talk about perception reaction time, which is what Ivan's talking about. So the data entering through the eyes, ears into the brain of our striker is
mhm.
after someone that let's say defense has made a decision or after our guys are stalling. They have to wait to see what someone else is going to do. They're dependent upon seeing what they're being dealt in order to take action. Even if we're talking about fractions of a second, it does put them behind whoever would make the active decision ahead of time, or if they were practiced enough to know what to expect. If they had enough reps and they knew the ball was going to come this way and they'd been drilled, as you've talked about us needing, that would help offset that tiny bit of time that does make a difference in what their action is going to be and to adjust. And OODA loop
Correct.
stands for, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was about to say, since you started talking about it, we might
I
as
was just
well
going to
touch
say
on it.
what it
So,
is, and then we can dissect it some other time. But I don't even know if people know when we say it that it's an acronym or what. So OODA is spelled OODA. It's a
mhm.
concept apparently developed by military strategist John Boyd, according to Google. And the letters stand for observe, orient, decide, and act. Basic
Yeah.
theory is you need to be ahead in the cycle of the OODA loop of the other person in order to maintain control of a situation or to win your encounter. But when I speak of OODA loop, folks, that's what I'm referring to. And at some point, Ivan can expand on it further as to how it plays with our strikers' decision making.
So,
But
um,
I can
the
bring it in.
Welsh
We're going to
one.
bring it in. We're
No, no,
45
no.
minutes. You want to talk about Wickham?
No, I don't really want to talk about Wickham. And just like I said before, let's touch on that. The game against Wickham is a very important game, season decider,
Right.
6 pointer, whatever you want to call it. But the thing is that the way the things go right now, the game, the next game against Wickham will be. It depends. The result depends only on one team, and that team is Wickham, because we know
Mm,
exactly what Wrexham is going to do.
okay.
Nothing will change. And that's just about Wickham exploiting the possession that they're going to get, exploiting the moments that they're going to get, and how they're going to react to that same old Wrexham setup and that same old reaction that we are going. Because again, I said it before, the fact that everybody can accept the fact that we operate on reactions is actually very sad, because operating on reactions is being on the back foot all of the time. Now
And
with Welsh one in his comments, uh, he says that the only creative part we got is down the wings, and I said that the previous episode we call it kick and chase. So kick the ball down the wing into space, let your faster winger catch up to the ball and deliver a cross. But then we also have problems with crossing because they always go into weird spots. Again, very unpredictable. No spark from midfield going forward. He says that Rathbone is great but not creative. We play too defensive or deep midfielders. We only need one with two attacking midfielders. That's exactly relates to the point of what we were talking all this time. Is that we have a team of destroyers. There is no creative individuals because we rely on individual performance. Ideally, we should have a ball playing, creative people on the squad. We don't, and
okay.
that's the only person. The only person responsible for that is Parkinson, because he chose
Okay.
those players. He handpicked those players over the years, and we have discussed that before. So the Welsh one is
When you
absolutely on point. And there isn't
speak of,
one more thing.
oh, yeah, go.
We should push Jay further up front and put Lee or even Mullen as a number 10. I would argue, like, yeah, that makes sense what you're saying, but I would argue at this point it almost doesn't matter who's playing, because they, just like I was saying before, Parky has this incredible talent of making everybody looking same level of shit. So it doesn't matter who steps in. They all, like, when we get a new player from somewhere else,
Yeah.
first couple of games that player is looking a lot better because he's not being Parkinized just yet. So he has those fresh
Organized.
ideas. But then it almost doesn't matter who plays.
Right.
Everybody
Which
looks
what I was
equally
going to
poopy. Yeah.
reemphasize with you is when you were saying to folks um, that, it's not going to change. It doesn't matter, what we say about Wickham because we know what we're going to see. I wanted to make sure folks meant that a change in lineup is not what you're talking about,
No.
because some folks are hoping for one person to make an appearance versus another. We've had a pretty consistent lineup the last several games, I would say, but that's not what you're talking about as far as change. That you're talking about a more fundamental kind of change, and as you have just said in another way, it's you can have a different lineup, but your expectations of what was going to be delivered on the field would be the same, because it doesn't matter who the person is. it's the same approach. It's still cake. It's still cake,
Yeah,
no matter
the
who you are.
last year, for example, when I was watching the games, yes, I could see the somewhat of an impact of a certain player playing instead of another, and you could because
Mhm.
the difference between the quality of
Yeah,
players
we were
in
in
League
League
Two
Two.
was. We were in League Two. Our players were just so much better, and you can tell, like, yeah, that
Mhm.
guy is a lot better than that guy. It makes a difference.
Mhm.
Nowadays, it doesn't. Like, I'm not. Hmm?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, yeah, that was weird.
The wind must have picked up. We were in a wind warning as well, and I must not have fully closed the window because it sounded like there was a ghost
Like,
next to
there
me.
was a weird sound. So I would argue that right now, honestly, it doesn't really matter who plays. It's going to
Okay.
be the same thing. It's because we are the way we play. We're very creatively limited, and
Mhm.
when you're giving away so much
Which
possession,
is
there is
fixable if you make different choices. You're not
not
saying that this
anymore.
can't
It's
happen
not.
with this
It's
team, that
Mhm.
they all have this baseline potential, but it has to do with what's asked of them or what they are trained to do or told to do that might be preventing us actually seeing it happen. That it's not necessarily the onus of the players, but what medium they're being told to put their football skills through to bring that about.
Exactly. Well, look
Thank you.
again. The Welsh
I
one,
got one.
the Welsh one actually is spot on there. He says, "True, Parky does that, but the opposition know we are pushing down the wings. They put
Yeah.
overloads on our wingers, which
Yep.
leaves their center stretched. If we had a third option down the middle, they would not risk the overload, leaving more space, and only 1v1s will be happening on the wings." Remember how Barnett was very much a shining person, shining player.
For a while,
He
yeah.
got for a while. That's exactly what the Welshman is talking about.
We got figured
If
out.
you
Yeah.
yeah, McLean got figured out the same way. When you only have that one option, it's
Hmm.
kind of easy to switch that player off. There is a few ways of doing that, but because we have no plan B, even for this little situational play, there is nothing coming from the center. That avenue of advance that we had through the wings is now shut off, and
Hmm.
there is nothing left but a long ball
Yes.
up front.
I
So,
think that this season we had a couple of situations, a couple of, and
mhm.
because they really stand out to me since we don't have them that often, where not by accident, but clearly had been some sort of drill. I think there was one that Maka was involved in. I can't remember who else, but we had about three goals that came or plays that almost ended in goal that you could tell had been drilled and was not our normal formula. Because I was as surprised as probably the defense would have been because
Mhm.
we don't see it. But we haven't seen those plays again. I mean, it's not like you're limited to doing it just once a season. You could bring that back. We do it so rarely, but maybe if I go back and look who was involved in those incidents, if we don't have exactly the same person, then the chances of it, or all the way down from like when we had possession, all the way down to that scenario manifesting. When you talk about replicatability, if we don't have those people, if one of the people was, let's say, Andy Cannon, we can't do that play now because
No,
it can only happen with those exact players. And again, it's like what 1% of what we see of movement on the pitch versus, and I'm not talking about the accidents. I'm talking about we had a few. I'd have to look at my notes that were clearly drilled by how well they were executed, but we only saw them
most of the
once.
things that we do, unfortunately, they are not replicable. Most of the things that we do, we cannot repeat that. We cannot reliably reinstate that on
Mm-hmm.
demand. Because in order to achieve that, you need to have numerous things that are replicable, and then you can choose which one you want to execute. When you only have one, when you're one trick pony,
We're a
you
one trick
you
pony.
you get bogged down, and then kick and chase starts, and then playing what you see starts, which on this level doesn't give you any kind of advantage anymore, unless you had a team of a Champions League level, and then that those players can play what they see and still take advantage of their superior skill, speed, and physical abilities. um, the
Along that
and
vein, it does make Parky seem like, unfortunately, an amateur magician.
very
like
much so,
we
very
we are
much
not
so.
at Vegas. We are doing children's birthday parties. If
Yes,
that's
we are. That's why I was saying, like, the way we play,
like
it's
an
schoolyard,
award-winning rabbit,
schoolyard football.
but that's our one trick. Oh,
The what I wanted to say as well is that uh, at this stage, the issues that we have are unfixable. There is nothing people can do, anybody can do right now to fix this. So the only way that it can end is we will have to change the entire
leadership.
setup. Welsh one says we can't even do kids' birthday parties if you have one trick. So
That's
that's
true.
true.
That's true.
Even
He's
kids
right.
will
We'll
get
want more
bored.
than that. Well, maybe if you just change the color of the rabbit. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can.
But we're almost
Uh,
at an hour. Did you have anything more that you wanted to say for folks who weren't aware about the 10-minute tasting or anything else you want to cover before we go into
no,
other segments?
I think we pretty much spoke about everything. We're at the point right now where I would like to um, I would like for this stage to be over, and I would like to
Fast
see a
forward.
substantial development, and I would like to see something that will actually bring a little bit of foundation and future proofness.
Hmm.
Because right now the foundation that we have is very shaky, and you can see that the cracks they really show with all the um, conflict or whatever is happening. And it's trust me, guys, it's been going on for a while. It's not like it's
Oh,
been
yeah.
happening the last couple of weeks or not. Like to me, it was quite obvious that there is a very much like just like I said, players are playing in a psyched state. Players had issues amongst themselves with the coaching staff. It's been obvious for month and month and month. The reason why people don't talk about it is probably because they're not allowed to, and that's it. That's why it took so long to actually show.
Hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, um, for folks who didn't know, we have a experiment that we do where Ivan, as you can hear, finds a lot of Wrexham play very repetitive. So each week we do a drawing of a 10-minute segment. We call it the 10-minute tasting, kind of like a wine tasting, where he will sample a match instead of having to sit through the whole thing. And for the past episode, the minutes were minutes 11 through 20 that he was to observe a Wrexham match. For anyone who has followed us this far is probably aware that the feedback of those 10 minutes across the different episodes and their impact on the game result really hasn't changed. So that's just what I was referring to earlier. If this is your first episode and you're not familiar with us, and we will do a drawing shortly for what his future homework assignment will be when he watches a segment of the match and him returning to us with his thoughts on that segment. Are you ready for everything is football?
Yes, I am. My
Oh,
favorite part.
before I do that though,
Yep. Yep.
for we've had a lot to say today about what is lacking in the
Hmm.
Wrexham men's team, which again, maybe we should come up with an intro where we tell people that that's what we're talking about. Because obviously we know what we're talking about. Anyway, so the Wrexham women, for those who have been following, are having a good a good moment. Um, a lot of the things that Ivan talks about not happening on the men's side, we're seeing on the women's side. And I would really love for us to figure out a way to get you to see some of those matches because is it perfection? Of course not. It's a completely different league, completely different level. But I get so giddy when I think about what if you could see some of this play and even have a side by side comparison for you of what they're getting right that the men are getting wrong as basic concepts of what you're trying to illustrate or needed. And
Mm.
they've worked so hard with so much less. And when you see, again, more of the team interchangeability, when we go from having been so dependent on Rosie Hughes, even just last season, to carry this team, to have her role, at least as a leading goal scorer, be so revamped and she doesn't really have near the play time on the pitch for
Mm.
whatever reason. But we have several women's matches coming up. including, I think, on Sunday. So I would encourage anyone who is maybe getting particularly fatigued with the predictable heartache or heartburn that the men's team can bring on to please watch the women. And you'll find it more exciting. I mean, I don't know when any of us have been excited rather than anxious or bored in some cases watching the men's team, except for moments of brilliance, moments of personal brilliance, perhaps.
Hmm.
But with the
Hmm.
women's team, they have been on an upward trajectory, and it's been so gratifying, I think, for those of us who have been following, to see from the struggle to where they're at now. And of course, there's always room for growth, but please check them out. It looks like, what is Welsh one saying funny stuff in the comments?
Yeah, no, but he
I
said
can
that
find them later. I can
he
find
said
them later.
he's thinking about identifying as a woman. The way the season goes, yeah, yeah,
Well, he could certainly
yeah.
identify as a women's fan, as the Wrexham
Mm-mm.
women's fan, and join in the streams. Usually on iFollow for at least North American streaming. I'm not sure what the options are for the different parts of the world. They don't tend to have replays. Sometimes it's on S4C on YouTube, but you can go on to the Instagram page for the women. I guess they have an X. I don't know how much that's used anymore for their upcoming matches, results, reports, things like that. It is, in my opinion, been more exciting, certainly of late, to watch than the men's side, and I've enjoyed the
Well,
sincerity of that success.
Deandra is in the comments, and she says
Yes.
that the women's team have had an incredible turnaround. Yes, I
Yes. And please
everybody's
watch
surprised.
Deandra when she streams. If you don't have the ability to stream, I follow and see the match firsthand yourself. Deandra on the Red Horde hosts watch alongs for the women's matches. And I
Okay.
know she has a couple she won't be able to attend coming up, but they will still be hosting the opportunity. So, folks who don't want to subscribe to iFollow, or you have a different limitation based on where you're at in the world, you can
Hmm.
follow along with a group of other fans and get commentary from the Red Horde group, as opposed to the Wrexham Mark Griffiths commentary. And it's a great community, a great time, and they would be very happy to have you. And she's fantastic. I've watched,
I
after I've watched the match, just to watch Deandra.
I need to start watching ladies football. I when my last experience with girls football was when I was trying to assist in coaching. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, girls football is very passionate, and they are very very hard workers, and they are eager to learn. There is
Great. And you have
there
the unique
is there,
situation here of they were prohibited from playing for so long, or not getting
I,
recognition in the UK, which
yes,
is kind
yeah,
of interesting.
it's great to see, like, and myself having I have a daughter, and if she ever decides to play football, it will be a very interesting journey for all of us. The only thing is that, yes, we have to remember that the game goes for girls and
Oh,
boys is
different
essentially
animals.
no, is
Different animals.
essentially the same, but it's just executed um, at a
Okay,
different
fair.
at a different pace. So it's just uh, and it's easier for somebody to learn about football. And if you're new to football, watching women play can be a little bit easier to learn, just because you're everything happens. They girls, the way they play, same as girls will in the army, for example. A lot of the times, girls, they operate heavy machinery, is
Mm-hmm.
because it's actually safer, and it's been proven over and over again that ladies are a lot more technical, they're a lot more careful, they're a lot more methodical when working with heavy machinery, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Boys like to go and everything gets
Well, it's a
broken and
great big
slammed. And
toy. I would
yeah,
also offer that
yeah.
for someone who is a learner, right? And I think of this maybe with foreign languages or things like that. I enjoy watching the women's team, especially when they're winning the way that they're winning and it's exciting, or even if it's just they're battling, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I
Very
would argue
passionate,
that
very passionate.
watching men's football that is good, or men's football that is proficient, I could
Mm.
see because of the support and whatnot they have. And again, I only really watch Wrexham and now Wales, so I'm not the best example. You could sign on to some premier team and probably see stuff that I would find terribly confusing, only knowing parky ball. But my point being, when I think of it as rugby, when I first got involved with the sport, my coach told me the best thing you can do is to watch and consume lots of rugby
Hmm.
footage. And having
Hmm.
been watching the Six Nations, which is still going on, go Wales, um, that if you have, world class athletes performing, regardless of their men, if you have world class athletes performing, that is a terrific way to learn about a sport because you're seeing it executed at the highest level. So some of the more minor um, confusions or pitfalls and things aren't present as much as in lower levels of play. So I would say maybe not even so much that it's men's. I could probably watch, I don't know, I think the Lionesses, I don't know, whoever the English women's national team is supposed to
Hmm.
be really
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
Probably watching
Hmm.
them, you could see technical aspects that would be so clear and evident like a textbook versus when it's a little bit more blurry. And I
Hmm.
guess with the women's, it's more that I can appreciate having followed the individual players and how they work together. Or again, it's not the Rosie Hughes show anymore. To align that with a lot of what you have said, not just on the show, but as I've known you, to be developing or delivering a product that you're asking for or hoping that the men ultimately do within their frame. So, yes, not different animals exactly, but not exactly the same. Um, Everybody watch the women. And now we're over an hour in. Are you ready for everything is
No, hold
football?
on.
Oh,
I have another little comment. The
go
Welsh
ahead.
one says Ruby watches Wales and dresses as
Oh, hell yeah.
Irmari Wid. Excuse my Welsh.
Oh, it's probably.
Is Chanel Welsh? So yeah, obviously from Welshmen. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
No, man,
yeah.
I wish so. I think about that every day now. I wish I
You gotta
was
move to
Welsh.
Wales,
I
man.
thought about it
You gotta
before
move
the
to Wales.
election. I wanted to be
Yeah.
Welsh before the election,
Yeah.
but
Look, I wanted to say on that note is just to give more examples of how ladies operate when it comes
oh sure.
to technical aspects and teamwork. If she wants to learn Welsh, let me know. So Welsh one can teach Welsh.
Well,
Perfect.
that's very kind. Thank you.
um, the um, when uh, I had an opportunity, and I was exceptionally lucky to when I was playing hockey, ice hockey,
Hmm.
um, a Swedish
I can't
national
believe how little
team.
we've talked about hockey on this show. Like people just
I
don't know.
don't. Oh, actually, I just had another idea. Yeah, I'll talk about it later. But anyway, I was lucky enough to be on the ice, and I received a few training sessions uh, from a lady who was a Swedish hockey team, national hockey team captain,
Oh, wow.
Olympic medalist on many occasions, highest level hockey player.
Hmm.
And when I was on the ice with her and when we were doing some training, I have never seen a better skater in my life. The way she
Wow.
skated, the technicality, the girls really stick to technical basis and everything they do when it comes to implementing and executing, whether it's a tactical plan, whether it's a movement, whether it's the way they pass, the way they can communicate. Everything is just textbook. And that's what a lot of the times is missing
Yes.
in the men's sport because egos take over and they don't.
Or they can
Uh,
muscle through something. Maybe a good comparison is where size is not to the advantage. You mentioned artillery. I'm going to think more maybe martial arts, let's say.
Yeah, I
If
was
you
about to say
have,
like when you do jujitsu, for example, or
yes.
judo, the whole point of the art is to be able to technically execute a certain movement, and the size becomes secondary. But with the males, usually you just muscle through, just like you said, you take the shortcut. Girls usually don't, and that was a very good experience for me when I saw her doing things on the ice and explaining things and demonstrating things the way that I've never seen before. It was quite a revelation, and I have learned a lot from her. They obviously we have to understand that there is um, the there is a certain uh, there's a certain way that the female sports is represented in today's society, and
Yes.
they just the level of the level of or the presence in the online space is completely different. So, um, and hopefully, it will change in the future because girls
Well, one
do
by
deserve
one,
that.
one
Yeah.
convert by each. The folks who will go check out the women based on everything that's been said in social media spaces, while they're disappointed in Wrexham, will lead to more. It's not going to be, a matter of overnight, but as they continue to deliver, as people are able to recognize quality, I believe that with the right support, in the future, women's sport, but women's football in the UK, specifically in Wales, is going nowhere but up. So also follow the Wales women's team. I saw my first Wales women's match. I tried last season and didn't get to see some, but that was fantastic. When you talk about a female space, from the commentating to former players speaking, as a woman who has been involved in sport, and I've had the opportunity to be in those spaces, it was so comfortable. It was just as, when you think about some action movies, there female centric action movies that I really enjoy because they don't treat it like a woman's film, right? And the same level of technicality in the stunts or the levels of violence or whatnot. I find it so validating because rather than trying to put femininity in a box, they're
Mhm.
allowed to just be a person in what's more taken as a masculine or hyper masculine space. But that, I guess, could be its own episode as well. And we're now almost an hour and a quarter. Ivan, are you
I
ready? You need to stop looking at the
Yes,
chat so we can
yeah,
do everything as
no,
football.
no, no, yeah, yeah, I know, I know. Just wanted to. There's a Welsh one a while back had a comment about Ryan Longman. We will talk about the new players. There will be an episode when we will talk about the new players and maybe unbox that a little bit because that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, unfortunately, just like I said, the way we play, everybody looks the same. So it's yeah, it's yeah. Let's not go back into that and let's play everything is football. Let's go.
Okay, now that Ivan is ready, for those of you who have not been on one of our episodes before or able to hang on to the end, Everything is Football is a game where I present Ivan with a random object. We have three of them today. He has not been told what this random object is, but given his extensive knowledge and the interweaving of the values of football into everyday life, I thought it would be fun to present him with challenges of things usually unrelated to football and him being able to speak with a story or his perspective on how that item could be incorporated into football. There are no real restrictions on this, and we've had some great insight from his career or from kind of football culture to
Hmm.
talk about our previous items. So today,
Hmm.
let's see, what will I start with? I will start with a Christmas ornament. So for those who cannot see, I'm holding up a kind of turquoise miniature Christmas bauble, a circular spherical ornament that's glittery and not showing up that well up against our green foil curtain I have today. But
Hmm.
Ivan, a Christmas ornament, how is
Christmas
it
ornaments.
football?
That's very easy. Back in the mid 20th century, it was a formation that was used quite widely around world football. It used to be called the Christmas tree. So
No way!
yeah, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it looked exactly like a Christmas tree. Yeah,
Oh
it
my
was a very
gosh!
so like 442 became very popular in the 80s and the 90s, and then 433 closer to early 2000s. So yeah, the
Bring
Welsh one
back the
is
Christmas tree!
the Christmas tree. So yeah, when you just said it, I was like, yeah, Christmas tree. It's when
I
you
had not.
when you study football, and that's one of the first things. Like when you're doing deep dives into development of the game and
Mhm.
formations and how systems develop from different formations. The Christmas tree formation is it's just as famous as the reverse W, for example. Or yeah,
Which I
yeah.
have also not heard of, but fantastic. Well, thank you, Ivan.
Yeah,
Wow, I,
yeah.
I was
And the Welsh
wondering.
one, I think he even beat me to it. He like the first one, like
If you know, you know.
yeah,
And I did not
yeah,
know.
yeah,
I thought it was just
yeah,
how I was
yeah,
trying to trick you with it being spherical and yeah, again, the
yeah.
depths of your connections. Everything really can be football. Okay, so our second item that needs some TLC and obviously isn't used very much by me. We have an iron. An iron for ironing clothes that I had to blow some dust off of. Not my favorite
Yeah,
chore.
yeah.
How is
Yeah.
an iron football?
So Iron is a nickname. So there is a so CDM. A common nickname is Hoover or the vacuum cleaner. So
Yeah.
this that's the nickname for the type of the player there is. So it's a player who is relentless, works really hard, and whatnot. So Iron, at least in certain languages, we used to call a Iron is a libero or the
Oh, libero. Okay.
the libero, the center back in old school formations. It would be the last defender
Mm-hmm.
behind the line of defense. So like it would be three and one at the back. That
Like
was
a
before
volleyball.
the yeah, it was before the offside rule was changed. So
Oh, okay.
and we used to call those guys they are the irons because they iron everything out. So they go and
Oh,
they
wow.
they destroy like the last line of defense. So at least in certain languages in the world, those guys are called the irons. And
Sure.
the Welsh one says the irons, the nickname for West Ham.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe
So
I'll have
there you
reason
go.
to remember
It's
that
great
someday.
to thank you so much, the Welsh one. It's amazing to actually have that interaction too.
Well, of
Uh,
course, to have that engagement for you.
well,
Okay. So,
he said the irons are the sweepers. Yeah, they are the nickname. I think it's in maybe in
oh,
English
and said
speaking
libero,
world,
a
the
position name.
sweepers. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
we
Sweeper.
yeah. Now
Okay.
actually, I heard some English speakers referring to those type of players as irons. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our last item for today in Everything is Football is, and I checked the rules, is a sword.
It's a saber.
It'll keep it sheathed. A saber, technically, yes.
Yeah.
So, Ivan, how is a sword or a saber football? Weren't expecting that, were ya? Ha!
No, I was not. I was not. I'm pretty sure there would be
I've
a
been
football
looking
team in the
forward to this.
I'm pretty sure there would be a football team in the world that has a nickname Saber,
Of the
and
sabers?
yeah, well, Sheffield, the Welsh one beat me to it. I wasn't sure if it was Sheffield United, but yes, it is. The nickname is the Blades. But
Ah,
I uh, the
take your
Saber.
time.
Um, um, in my head, at least we when I was growing up, we were practicing a certain element of the game where the 4-5-1 that was the formation that we used to play a lot. Uh, as a hold up forward, you receive the ball, and instead of quite often you have a defender or two straight on your back. Uh, Instead of trying to turn with the ball, you usually play a diagonal pass back to your attacking midfielder, and
Okay.
he sets up a through pass for a oncoming wide winger or
Okay.
wide forward receiver. And that maneuver, at least my coach, we used to call it a dagger. So it wasn't necessarily a saber, but
Oh,
it was a blade.
there's a
It's just
blade.
because depending on like if I'm receiving the ball and I have a split second to decide which angle I'm going to be playing it on, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the decision making that I'm there is a certain amount of triggers that I have to consider. But if I play the ball right or left, we used to call it dagger right or dagger left. So it's just a certain
Ah.
that's what I mean. Those patterns that you learn. It's like in American football, you have colors and codes and numbers that
Mm-hmm.
you. Same
Sure.
here. It was just, and that's what we used to say, like dagger left, dagger right, and yeah, pass the ball straight
Awesome.
through to the wide receiver. So yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ivan. This has been Everything is Football, folks, and we'll be back with it on our next episode. Ivan might be doing, due to my schedule, some more Ivanologues by himself, and I may not be a part of every episode going forward, but the next one I am on, we will do Everything is Football again with different items. Are you ready for the drawing for the 10-minute tasting, Ivan?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, as I explained before, folks, Ivan can't sit through a full match, generally speaking, so we have 10-minute segments that we've broken the match down into. I have them in our tin pot since we are Wrexham. And after he has a 10-minute segment, it doesn't get replaced in the pot. So, for example, last week he had minutes 11 through 20. He won't be doing that again until we've exhausted all of the slips of paper of a 90 minutes. The rules are he watches that segment and reports back as to how that segment impacted that or was related to the outcome of that match. But also, if he gets time that covers added time at the end of the first half or the end of the second half, he just has to eat those minutes and watch those as well. So he doesn't get out of added minutes. So I will give them a little bit of a stir. I'll pull out today's slip. And it's, oh, wow, another great time. Minutes 81 to 90. How
Yep.
fun for
Yep.
you. We've got several games
Very
with
much.
7 added minutes and whatnot.
Yep, I'll watch 10 edit minutes on top of that. Yeah, no, it'll be if it's me on my own after the weekend game. Yeah, that's awesome, and hopefully you guys will be able to join me in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's all that I have, Ivan. Is there anything you want to tell folks when other than we have an Instagram page now? If you aren't familiar, it's iWords and Upwards on Instagram. It's where we will announce upcoming episodes. So when you tell me when you're ready to go live, I'll make sure to put that out earlier this time than I did
Yep.
today. It's also a place where you can submit questions for Ivan to answer, as well as in the comments on YouTube here on the channel. We also have an email address that potentially people could submit things to. That we could share at some point. But please keep those coming. Thank you, Mardi Gras, and everyone who has submitted a question thus far. They've been really interesting, and I've certainly learned from the answers,
Absolutely.
and I hope folks have too.
L- Ladies and gents, please submit your questions, conversational topics, any comments. And we're also going to be doing a separate episode about Ukraine and the war that's been happening. If you have any comments, questions, things that you want to find out about that, and in the historical aspects, in any other shape, way, or form you want to know more, mention that too. We will do a separate episode on Ukraine and Slava Ukraine.
Okay. Well, I guess we should come up with something cool that we do at the end instead of just because then we have the hang time after you
Yeah,
click the button
yeah.
before it makes us actually not go live. So I guess until we think
We'll
of
we'll
that,
think we'll think about that. For now, thank you very much,
iWords and
everybody.
Upwards.
I words and upwards. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Bye.